The Great Hall stands as a magnificent testament to ancient stone and heavy timber. High above, the vaulted ceiling is lost in a persistent haze of smoke, where heavy iron chandeliers hold flickering tallow candles that cast dancing amber shadows across the walls. At the very heart of this cavernous space sits a table of such gargantuan proportions that it appears to have been carved from the very foundations of this fortress itself. This massive oak trestle groans and creaks audibly under the staggering weight of the evening's bounty. It's a landscape of culinary excess. A roasted boar's head garnished with rosemary and bay leaves takes pride of place at the head of the board. Beside it lie platters of venison haunch dripping with rich dark gravy, accompanied by golden crusted pies that release thick clouds of savoury steam when pierced. Piles of artisanal bread sit alongside wheels of pungent aged cheese and bowls of honeyed delicacies. Glistening fruits, including poached pears and dried figs, are tucked between silver chargers heaped with spiced lampreys. Crystal decanters and heavy pewter flagons overflow with deep crimson wine and frothing golden ale, their sweet and yeasty scents mingling with the heavy aroma of roasting fat. The air is thick with the heavy perfume of cloves, cinnamon, and burnt wood. Every inch of the dark wood is obscured by this mountain of sustenance. Sat at the table, their faces rendered grotesque by the dancing shadows, are a dozen hugely obese men, each slathering over the repast laid before them. These men don't produce the food, they don't till the earth, they don't slaughter the beasts. Their expertise lies purely in the arrangement of the meal. And when the feast begins, it's a spectacle of gluttony. These men don't nibble, they carve out enormous proportions, far more than they could ever hope to digest. They're insatiable, rapacious. They consume with a terrifying intensity and at a terrifying rate. Their movements scarily rapid, and their hands a blur as they cram more and more into their gaping mouths. Their cheeks flush with the heat of the wine, and their eyes glaze with the sheer weight of their intake. And just out of reach of the chandelier's glow crouch the scavengers, their faces gaunt and their bellies empty. These are the men and women who brought the food to the table. They're the ones who kept the fires burning, but they're not permitted to sit. The scavengers are forced to watch those gathered at the table with a mixture of resentment and desperate hope. They wait for the trickle, the belief that the gluttony at the top will eventually overflow, providing sustenance for those below. But today, the trickle is a tradition that is no longer observed. Those sat at the table no longer leave leftovers. When a platter is pushed away, it's not passed down, it's discarded. By the time a carcass reaches the hands of the scavengers in the shadows, it's been stripped of every ounce of fat. The marrow's been sucked from the bone. All that remains are the gristle, the rinds, and the shards of crust that have fallen onto the carpet. For the scavengers, the fight over the crumbs is a battle for survival. For the greedy sat at the table, that fight is viewed as sport. The people at the table look down and tut at the lack of decorum among the poor, oblivious to the fact that they created the starvation that fuels the frenzy. There's a strange phenomenon that occurs as the feast nears its end. The great consumers, now bloated to the point of immobility, begin to complain about the service. They find fault with the temperature of the room or the speed with which the bones are cleared away. They become sluggish. They're so weighed down by the sheer volume of what they consumed that they can no longer see the floor, let alone the people crawling upon it. They demand more, even as they struggle to breathe. They take on more courses, not because they've got the capacity to finish them, but simply because their greed will not allow them to stop. They hoard the food until it rots on the plate, rather than letting a single morsel fall intentionally to the scavengers below. On some occasions, those at the table even consume scavengers that they believe to be nutritious to them. Meanwhile, the scavengers grow thinner and more desperate. What was once a dog-eat-dog existence has descended into a fight among rats. They no longer fight for food. They're eating each other, kept in a state of permanent, controlled malnutrition by the very people they serve. Of course, this is not the tale of a banquet. The great consumers and the scavengers are not merely the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots. They're the two tiers of the UK construction industry. It's an industry that is top-heavy, greedy, and lethargic, governed by giants that have grown too fat to move, supported by a frantic, starving army of scavengers who are forced to feed off the crumbs of a feast that they helped create. And with each new meal, those at the table grow fatter, while the scavengers are forced to eat each other merely to survive.